Welcome back. In this second video I want to show you a few advanced tricks with UXPin. And now we're going to base it a little bit on this Rebuilding Haiti interactive story. So you'll see if you start reading the story that at some point you also have a choice, which is similar to what we did in the previous video, where depending on which button you click, you get taken to either page 2 or page 3. But in this case, what happens is if you click one of these options, you kind of unlock additional content on the same page. So it's a little bit more interactive. Rather than navigating you to a different page, depending on what you choose, something changes on the current page. So this is the effect that we're going for now. And you can use this, of course, in many different ways. That you click somewhere and then something on a different place updates. So let's recreate kind of this example that we see here. I'm going to scroll down a bit and create some new content here. So for example, let's create two of these boxes that are your options, your buttons. So I'm going to create the first one. And the question I'm going to ask the readers if they think they will pass the interactive storytelling course. So the answer options are yes and no. So I'm going to put no on the left. Another interesting trick is if you hold Alt while you drag an object, you actually create a copy of it and you start dragging that one. So if I do that here, I can create a second one. I change this text into yes. Then I add some text to explain the concept in the middle, so to actually ask the question. Do you think you will pass interactive storytelling? Here I can do the same trick that we did in the previous video, so I can say that I want the width to be fixed. And then I can make it a bit smaller so that it actually fits. I can also center it here or align it to the right. So you can play around with different alignments of the text within this box as well. So I'm going to center it vertically. And then if I want to actually make sure that the white space between these objects is the same on both sides, what I can do is I can kind of position the outer ones. And then I can select all three, either by holding Shift and clicking them, or by dragging a box around them. Once I have all of them selected, there's this option here to distribute vertically, which means that I make the white space equally vertically or horizontally, and that's what we're looking for now. So if I click this one, you saw that this middle one slightly shifted, and now this white space is exactly equal to this white space, so that is perfectly aligned. So what we also want to do is we want to have two bits of text here that are shown or hidden depending on whether I click this or this button. So what I can do is I can create two texts. And in one I will say, so let's say you click no here. Then I can say something like, I'm sorry to hear that, sad face. I can position it somewhere here. And then what I do is I basically repeat this process for the yes answer option. And then I want to say that's great. So I'm going to position these on top of each other because they will never be visible both at the same time. So it's either one or the other. And then of course if I run the prototype now, I'm going to see all of this. So all of this will be visible by default. So what I can do here is that I can take these two items and then click this eye icon here so that it's actually invisible. So now if I run my prototype and I scroll down, I'm not going to see this text here right now. And then what we're going to do is quite simple. Using these interactions, we're going to either show or hide these different texts. So in order to do that, under no here, I can add an interaction. On click, I want to show the element, I'm sorry to hear that. Can even add an animation here again. I'm not going to do that right now. So I click add. Now you will see that it's linked. And I'm going to do the same for the yes option. So if I click on it, I want to show That's great. add this one. So if I test this now, go to bottom. Do you think you will pass interactive storytelling? Let's say I don't think I will pass. I'm sorry to hear that. So this triggers this to happen. There is still a bug. You might already anticipate this one. Of course, if I click yes now, it's going to show me the other text as well. So we still have the problem of overlapping text. So just to take care of that as well, we can add multiple interactions to the same object. So what I can do here is that when I click on the no button, I add a new interaction. I want to hide the other text. That's great. For yes, I want to do the opposite. Add a new interaction. And I want to hide I'm sorry to hear that. And you can add any kind of interaction to the same object, so any number as well. So what we could also do, for example, is if I press this button, I of course want to see that I've selected this one. So what I could also do is that if you click on more here, you have additional options. So what I could do is I could change the color of this object, which I think is actually, I hope this is not a text color. So I select this element. Ah, here you go. You have the different colors. So I can even change the border, the text color, or the background. So I could say that I want the background to change into something bright. Oops, I accidentally closed it. Okay, and then you can even add animations also to the color change. So if I add this one, and now I try out my prototype, go to bottom. If I click no, you see that the color changes and that I see the correct text. If I click yes as well, we didn't add the color change to this button, so it won't change color. This one will also not change back to gray, but you do see that the text, this one is going to disappear and then the right one is going to appear. So you see that I can flip between these two texts now as well, these two options, without having to navigate to different pages. So that's one of the more advanced tricks that I wanted to show you. Another interesting trick is you can exchange information between two pages. So what that means is that, for example, I can ask people to enter their name on this first page, and then I can reuse the name on page 2. So just to show you how that works, we need to use a new feature that I haven't explained yet, which is called variables, which are hidden here under this button. So this opens an overview of all the variables that you have, which are basically parts of memory that you can use to store different things in. So I can add a new variable, and you can give it any name that helps you recognize it. So for example, I call it viewer name. I have to press enter, sorry, viewer name. And then you can give it a default value, which you don't have to do. So in case of the name, of course, it doesn't make sense. The default value is empty. So okay, now it should be in the overview of the variables that I have. What I can do now is, maybe next to this button that takes me to page 2, I can add an input, which is basically a text area in which people can type things. So I can drag this, make it an interesting size. You see that it automatically gets a border, and people will see that it is an input text. So if I run it now, it should show up, and I can type stuff into it. But of course, we didn't add any interaction to it yet. So if I press this button now, I simply go to page 2 and nothing happens. So what I still have to do is, I have to make sure that whatever I type in here is stored in this variable that we have. And I do that by also adding an interaction. But rather than having the click as a trigger, I need to have value change as a trigger, which is specific to stuff where you can actually type into. So into these form objects. So if my value changed, what I want to do is I want to set variable. And then here I select the variable that we just created, so viewer name. And I want to set the variable to the content of an element. And the element is of course this one. So if I add this one, still nothing happens because the variable is never used. So you will see that in the background, whatever we type in there is stored, but it's never retrieved. So that's the second part of this exercise. We need to go to page 2. And then we add a bit of text that actually outputs the name. So I add a new text here. Move it underneath. And then I still need to create an interaction that makes sure that this text is actually filled with the person's name. So what I do then is I deselect everything so that we're on the page. And if I then add an interaction, I have the option of actually selecting page load. So this is triggered once when you navigate to this particular page. And what I want to do is, as an action, I want to set content of this element to the value of my variable viewer name. So if I then add this one, now we also have the retrieval part of this, feature. Okay, so that interaction is also set. So this interaction is actually linked to the page now rather than to this object. So if I go back to page 1 and press play, hopefully it will work. So my name is Jan, press button, and here it appears again. So this is an interesting way of actually communicating between these different pages that normally don't have any way to communicate with each other. Because as you already saw in the overview, if I switch to page 2, I lose all of my objects that are in the layers as well. So this is basically the only way you have to communicate information that is entered on page 1 to page 2. So what you could, for example, also do is keep track of which one of these two items is pressed. So if I create another variable here, and I name this one option chosen, I forgot to press enter again. I set the default to 0, which means I didn't select anything, for example. Then if I click this one, I add an interaction, which sets the variable option chosen to the value 1. And then what I could also do is, for this yes option, I could add a similar interaction that says, if I click this, I want to set the variable option chosen to the value of 2. And then I can do whatever I want with this information. So what I could do is, if I go to page 2, and I make a bright pink rectangle. Let's say I only want this to show if I think I will pass the course. Then what I can do is, let's see, I select the page again, new interaction, on page load, I can add a condition. So if my variable option chosen equals, you have all kinds of different options here. Is it true or false? Is it empty or not? But if it equals the value 2, which means that I selected yes in the previous page. So this is where we start using these conditions. So going through this step by step, my page loads. It starts to consider what the value is of my variable option chosen. If this is 2, then I perform the action. If this is not 2, I don't perform the action. So what I want to happen is that I want to show this rectangle. Okay. Now, of course, it's visible by default now. So what I still need to do is I need to select this rectangle and then hide it. And then that should do it. So if I go back to page 1 and I run this, I go to the bottom. So first I will say that I think I won't pass interactive storytelling. Then I will go to page 2. There's no rectangle visible now. But if I go back, now I think I will pass. Go to page 2, and there's my pink rectangle. So that's a way of even retaining these options that people chose way back on the first page, and still making use of those to customize what people are going to see on your second page. So I think this is about as advanced as it gets. So I think I've taught you almost everything I know, and I will see you in the Q&A session to answer all of your questions about this.